Hello, I'm Ollie, and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, Quentin Tarantino's favourite novel of the year, Nobody's Angel, by Jack Clarke. So this was kindly sent to me by Titan Books, who carry the hard case crime line in the UK. So this edition was published in February of this year. The book originally came out in 1996. So Quentin Tarantino is quoted on the cover and inside as saying it's his favourite novel of the year. I'm not sure which year that was. I'm not sure if that's 2024. If it is 2024, then he's showing his hand very early in the year. So I'm not sure if that's 24 or 96. Or I think this was published previously by Hard Case Crime earlier as well. This is a new edition. So at some point, anyway, Quentin Tarantino has called this his favourite novel of the year. And it's a really entertaining and interesting book. And I can see why it appealed to him. There's a lot in here that will feel familiar to Tarantino fans. It's got that kind of everydayness to it, but also that kind of seam of violence running through it. So it's a book about the kind of day-to-day life of ordinary people that gets infused with violence at times, which is definitely something that is familiar from some of Tarantino's films, particularly his earlier films. So let me tell you what it's about, and a bit about Jack Clarke, the author, as well. So Jack Clarke was a taxi driver in Chicago, and this book is about a taxi driver in Chicago. So it's very much Jack Clarke, drawing on his own experiences. And the book is very much about that. It's very much about being a taxi driver, and that's one of the things I enjoyed most about the book, is that sense of the day-to-day life of a guy who's a taxi driver. So you get that kind of rivalry and camaraderie with the other taxi drivers. So the other guys on the rank who he's kind of gossiping with and joking with and things like that. But you also just get the kind of day-to-day routine stuff. So there are a number of chapters in this book that are literally this guy picking up a fare, having a conversation with that person in the back of his cab. Sometimes the people in the back of the cab do kind of wild and outrageous things like have sex or are very drunk or whatever. Sometimes they're much more ordinary, but you get that that kind of conversation, and the dialogue in this book is great. So you get that kind of conversation with the fare in the back of the cab, and then at the end of the trip you find out how much they paid him, how much they've tipped him, and he kind of reflects on the journey and on the tip, and it just that makes for something really, really satisfying. There's something satisfying about reading well-written descriptions of everyday occurrences that aren't necessarily things that you personally are familiar with. So I really, really enjoyed that about the book. But it is a crime novel, it's a mystery novel, so you also get a couple of mysteries woven into it. So one of the events that very early on in the book is Eddie Miles, the central character, discovering in an alleyway a girl who's been attacked. And he calls an ambulance, he makes sure she gets to safety, gets the care that she needs. But there's a thread throughout the book of him trying to figure out what's happened to her. And then you've also got a series of attacks that are happening to taxi drivers, so people that Eddie knows. And again, you've got him trying to figure out what happens there. So there are a couple of different mysteries that are juggled throughout the book, which are interesting and entertaining to read. And I was reflecting on the fact that it's quite a common technique for crime novels, is where someone draws on their own experience, where someone knows about something, writes a book set in that world that they know, but injects a mystery into it. There are a number of well-known authors who've done that. The one that leapt to my mind, someone who was very successful in the UK and I think was reasonably successful in the US as well, was Dick Francis, who was a jockey, who wrote like dozens and dozens of mysteries that were set around the world of horse racing. So Nobody's Angel is kind of very much from that from that style of crime fiction. And as I say, that the fact it is so centred in a world that Jack Clarke obviously knows very well really, really works, and it makes for an extremely engaging and enjoyable read. One of the things that definitely dates this book is and dates it to the mid-90s, is some of the dialogue and some of the racism between characters in the book. So I'm certainly not saying that the book is racist, but if you think about, you know, like kind of early Tarantino films, and that kind of, there was a wave in the 90s of all of a sudden people feeling it was acceptable to use racial slurs like all the time, and Tarantino, I think, was a big part of that. That's definitely something that is true in that book, in this book. It's not necessarily something I have a problem with. I don't really feel it's overdone in this book. But it did, it was something that made the book feel a little bit dated to me. But aside from that, it's just really engaging and entertaining. And Eddie as a central character is a great central character. You get a lot about his personal life, but never so much that it kind of overwhelms the plot and the story. So, you know, he's divorced from his wife. His daughter, as a result, lives, you know, many miles away. So you get him kind of struggling with that. You get some stuff about his, you know, relationships, particularly with a neighbour of his, and also his friendships with the you know, the taxi drivers he works alongside. So he's a really good central character. You've got a couple of decent mysteries. I did think the mysteries weren't fantastically well handled in this. I think they could have been done a little bit better, and I think possibly having the two mysteries was a bit too much for Jack Clarke. I think this is his first novel, was a bit too much for him to handle. I think maybe it would have worked slightly better if there'd just been one mystery for him to kind of juggle. But the thing that most appealed to me about this book, and where I think it's very, very successful, is just in that depiction of the everyday life of a taxi driver. So if that's a topic that appeals to you, then I can't recommend this book highly enough. I really did have a really good time with it, and I'm going to check out more books by Jack Clarke in the future. So, hope you found that interesting. Let me know if you've read Nobody's Angel by Jack Clarke, or indeed any other books by Jack Clarke. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.